Team, welcome back to the channel. Today is gonna be a good topic to talk about. I'm talking to you in first-hand experience on this topic. And if you are somebody who has ever wondered, what the hell should I eat before I go and do my event? And I'm talking HYROX, ATHX, CrossFit competitions, DecaFit, Deadly Dozen, all the way through to backyard ultras, marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, and everything alike. If you've ever sat there and wondered, what am I supposed to eat and consume before this event? And if you think, like I used to and like I did, carb loading on pizza and Haribo sweets was a good idea before a marathon, I'm here to tell you that's not a good idea. I cramped up hard. I absolutely fucking slammed on the floor in complete and utter shit state because I didn't fuel up properly the night before. In fact, I smashed probably a bit too much coffee in the morning, didn't drink enough water, definitely didn't have electrolytes, had loads of pizza the night before, ate loads of sweets and thought, yeah, I'll be fine. Turns out not so good, especially with where I was. And I'm going to tell you where that was in a moment and kind of how it unfolded as well. You probably sat there wondering, who am I? Well, my name's Dean Hammond. I am the owner and the founder of the Catalyst Project, where we help everyday athletes unleash their absolute athletic potential, show them how it's done. I've worked in the tactical strength and conditioning space and optimized human performance with military athletes for the best part of 20 years. I've been involved in Olympic rowing, Olympic weightlifting. I've been involved in powerlifting, in CrossFit. I've been involved in a whole manner of different sports at amateur level all the way through to elite level. I've helped business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs, parents, professionals. I've helped people that are taking and tackling on their first 5K all the way through to people that are tackling the marathon to carbs. I've helped people improve their strength markers. I've done all sorts of stuff. So rest assured, the advice I'm giving you is just coming from experience from myself and the team behind the Catalyst Project, who I'm so blessed to have around me. And we're going to give you one of our absolute golden nuggets. We call it the fuel method. And this method, this principle, the fuel principle, is something that you, as the athlete, can take away and start using and implementing. It's not a tool. It's not 1,000 different methods coming at you. It is a principle-based nutritional framework that you can use and you can follow and you can play with and you can add. And if it will help you just stop guessing about what you should be doing when it comes to these events. And we're going to dive into it. So before we get into that, the question I was asked, and you might be asking, where's this come from? The question I was asked on my social media. If you don't follow me, head over to Instagram, Coach Dean Hammond. Really, really simple to find. And the question I was asked about carb loading for an endurance event. Eat the same as volume, decrease, and taper. And there was another question that came around was, how do I fuel for an ultra event? How do I fuel for an endurance event? And they were prepping for a backyard ultra that they're doing at the back end of this year. And that's what we're going to dive into. But before we do so, this was me. This was me in the middle of Iraq, 7 days into a deployment, and an opportunity came up to go and run a marathon around this one, just under a mile sort of compound. The night before, there's an amazing little cafeteria over the side, and I fueled up on pizza slices. I had Haribos that were sent over to me. In fact, I took some Haribos in my bag, but I later had more Haribos sent over to me, thinking that, I'm going to go and smash a pizza, smash loads of Haribo, drink some water, and then I'll be good to go. I can tell you right now that at this point here, this was me questioning my life. And somebody that was out there got a photo of this. I think this was about the 17 or 18 mile point, and I was in absolute fucking clip. I can promise you that now. And this is going back as far as what, maybe 2019, 2020. And I knew about nutrition. I knew what I should eat. I knew that this is the stuff that I should probably be taking on board to help me prepare effectively for what I was going to do. And I completely fucked up. Legs were cramping. Legs were heavy. My head was all over the place. I actually think I was hallucinating at one point. But hey, whatever. And let's just say the bathroom visits were the least... They just weren't good. And we're just going to leave it as that. We're just going to leave it as that. You can just see, I mean, look at my body language. I'm hardly in a great state here. And as you can tell, this just killed me off. And it's funny because nutrition and preparing for stuff like this, you don't need to live and eat like a fucking monk to be able to do this stuff. It's just making some intentional choices that support the goal and support what you're doing and who you are and the demands you're placing on the body. So I want to show you a framework that's going to help you really understand what we're coming at and how we get after it. And we call it the fuel principle or the fuel method. That picture gets me every time. Middle of a rack. That must have been about, I think, maybe it must have been about 9, 10 o'clock. We started early doors. I think it must have started at about maybe 6 or 7. I can't remember, but it was pretty warm. It was pretty muggy, and it didn't go well for me. I can tell you that. It didn't go well for me. So let me introduce you to the fuel method. The fuel method or the fuel principle is something that we try and get every athlete in the Catalyst Project to understand. I mean, it's all well and good us telling you what to do every single event you go and do, but we want to give you these type of principles so that you can take them away with you and ultimately train and play around with your nutrition so that you don't need a coach in the back corner all the time. But that's what we're here for. So let me introduce you to the framework, and then we're going to dive into some of these so you get a little bit more example. The first one, F, one of the biggest and most important things that so many people get wrong. F stands for fuel with carbs. And we're going to dive into what that looks like, how we do that, what do we do daily, pre-event, post-session, etc., during, and we're just going to give you some cues that you can take away. U, one of my favorites, Utilise, oh yeah, we're going to say it, electrolytes and water, ladies and gentlemen. Utilise electrolytes and water. Now, electrolytes have become a little bit of a buzz in the industry for so many people. And I don't know why. I think it's because of all the hype around influencers. Most of you Gen Pop athletes don't need to take electrolytes every single day. You don't need to. If your training sessions are going over an hour to 2 hours, 90 minutes to 2 hours, in fact, that's maybe where you need to take on board some electrolytes. But it's all fucking hype. You do not need to spend bucket loads of money on electrolytes. Use them when it's appropriate and when it's necessary. Where training activity dictates that, you're going to get into a session, it's going to go beyond 60 to 90, even 120 minutes. That's where realistically electrolytes kind of come into play. So that's what I'm just going to say on that one. Going back to the principle, we've then got E. Eat, and I guarantee you're probably already sat there spieling off what I'm about to write in this word. Eat like an adult. So many choices that people make are just made because they haven't looked at the real world application. They've just gone, yep, like I did, smash loads of pizza and loads of Haribo. That is what a teenage child would do. There we go. And then the final one, learn and practice early. This is where we talk about adding this stuff into your protocol. Try it. See what works. There is no use smashing a gel the day of your run and then shitting through the eye of a needle because you've never done or eaten those gels before. It just makes no sense. So this is why we want to dive into it in a little bit more detail and really get you to understand what these are. So let's look at the first one. The first one is fuel with carbs. So what do we talk about when we talk about fueling with carbs? And I kind of want to start up here. We're going to put fuel as the title, and we're going to go through some stuff. Now, there's probably a couple of little sweet spots that we want to try and understand when it comes to fueling. And it's really, really, really simple. Firstly, we need to understand daily, what do you need daily? What does somebody need daily in order to smash that event or hit their target? What do we need to do pre-event? What does the pre-event nutrition framework look like? That's another thing to consider. Pre-event, we talk about 24, 48 hours beforehand. How does that go? We then have pre-session. And again, this might be related to a long run. It might be related to a backyard ultra, a marathon, whatever it needs to be. We need an intra-event focus. What are some of the considerations that we need to look at there? And then finally, what do we do post? Now, again, these are just principles that we're sharing with you. These are what we give our athletes, and we've got access to a pretty cool little book that everybody gets access to, talking them through this fuel method and this fuel principle to really get a grasp on where we're at. So let's talk about daily. Well, daily depends on you and how much training volume you're doing. Okay, but I'm going to give you some average ranges. Typically, we want 4 to 7 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per day. Now, if you do the maths, and I'm not very good at doing maths here, if we were an 85 kg male and we times that by 7, my maths is absolutely awful. I have no shame in saying I'm about to use a calculator and tell you how much that looks. That would be anywhere from 550 to 600 grams of carbohydrates every single day. That's maybe what we're doing if I was a higher volume style athlete. Well, what's higher volume? That's me training probably 5-6 days a week, quite a lot of volume in terms of running or aerobic work, or quite a lot of volume in terms of strength and conditioning, and blending that with endurance work. I'm probably going to hit the higher end of that. This is based on stuff that we know, stuff based on research that we know. So it's just understanding that the more volume you do, you probably want to sit in the higher bracket. If it's not quite as intense and you're in an early stage or an early foundational phase of your program, typically we would probably go down to the 4 gram range. All right, give or take. Now, this is where I fucked up. We then start talking about pre-event. So the 48 to 72 hours that leads up to this, I fucked up. Yeah, I didn't do good. I binged hard on pizza and Haribo. Not a good look, ladies and gents. And that was 24 hours before. So what we want to try and do here is we may increase this up to 6 to 8 grams per kilogram of body weight. Now, for us, that might bridge this up to 600 to 700 grams of carbohydrates. So there could be a little bit of a carb load 3 days before, then again for the second day before. And then on that sort of day of, we might drop down to 5 to 7 in that region, maybe go down to 5 grams. It just depends on who you are, what works for you. And this is why we say you've got to try these event strategies or these nutritional strategies before you do them. Otherwise, what ends up happening is you go into the event and you just feel like shit. You binge, and that's not what you want. We want to top up. We can top up the system. That's all we're trying to do. So what do you do on the morning of? Now, I'm a big believer in try and do something that you're already doing. If you add a new strategy in on the day of your race, it will completely throw you off. Whatever you do, we want to look anywhere from 2 to 4 hours beforehand. For the middle of us, the sweet spot about 3 hours before the event. And for me, I'm typically looking at a higher carbohydrate breakfast, normalish protein, but low fiber and fat, because that slows down the digestion process. And we don't want that to happen. We want it in the system. Okay. We want that in the system. So anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, I'd be looking at 1 to 2 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. Now, again, if that's 85 kilos and I weigh 85 kilos as an example, I think I might be a little bit more than that, but don't tell anyone. 85 kilos, that's going to be anywhere from 80 grams, 85 grams, up to 160 grams of carbohydrates. Now, I know if I try and nail 160 grams of carbohydrates, that is going to put me in a real bad place. So my go-to for most mornings with my breakfast, overnight oats with a scoop of protein. I might double up on the oats. I might go maybe 100 grams potentially of dried oats, rolled oats, add some whey protein. I will stick it in a saucepan. I'll add a little bit of semi-skim milk, a little bit of water, blend it all together. Berries, a little bit of a Biscoff spread. Game changed. Absolute game changed. I'm telling you, go and try it before you come at me. And then a couple of little chocolate chips on top. You know the drill. Hey, we're all here for that, mate. We're all here for that. So again, that's just something to consider. And then a really simple rule when it comes to the event itself. Now, again, this will depend on who the individual is. If you're doing a like a HYROX, if you're doing an ATHX where there's a couple of multi-activities, if you're doing a marathon, I would say every 60, and I'm going to put this in white here, so there's a little bit of change in color. Every 60 to 90 minutes, we want to typically try and get on anywhere from 30 to 45 grams of carbohydrates total. That's what we found works for some of our athletes. And that could be a gel, it could be something chewable. If it's probably something like a HYROX, maybe at the 45, 60-minute station, you quickly get out your gel, get it in you and throw it out the way. In something like a marathon, I would try and get something on maybe every hour because it's a nice little breakup for lots of people. Some people don't need to take anything on. I definitely don't recommend that, but some people don't need to take anything on. When it comes to ultra endurance events, this is where playing with the strategy is really important because we've got guys that will do something every hour. We've got guys that will do something every 2.5 hours, every 2 hours. But more so often than not, we want to go anywhere from 60 up to 100 grams of carbohydrates per hour in a multiple of this different sort of transportable options. So like glucose and fructose, we want to look at things, typically these will be sweets, raisins, people use dates, people even like chewing like dried banana. People love all sorts of different things. So playing with a strategy that works for you is really important. Remember, carbohydrates are your fuel and they help you perform. If you underfuel, you will be in a really shit place, not just physiologically, but psychologically as well. So please practice with this. Understand where your body can and can't push, and then make some changes in towards that. We've got to understand some of the tolerance markers as well, because if you keep pumping 60 to 90 grams in your system per hour, understand there are going to be some digestive implications that you're going to have to play with as well. So there we go. The first principle, fuel with carbohydrates. It is so important. All right. Fuel with carbohydrates. This is a vital element that so many people neglect. And hopefully that's given you a really good understanding principally of what we're talking about with fueling. So let's move on to the second one. So the second one is, of course, the U. And we've already said this, but if it's a long event, we want to utilize electrolytes and water. Okay, electrolytes and water are going to be your friend, not your enemy. So many people try and they'll avoid water because they'll think they'll have to wee. I'm like, no, get it in the system. We want you to take water and electrolytes on. So how do we know what to have and what not to have? Well, one of the things that we can run is something called a bit of a sweat test. Now, how do we do this? Well, we would weigh you in the morning, fasted, as an example. We would then get you to go out on a 60-minute run at a relatively low level pace. And then we'd get you to come back and weigh yourself again, and we would measure the loss. So let's say, for example, you were 85 kilos when you did a sweat test, or when you woke up in the morning, fasted. So I'm just going to write this down, sweat test. Okay. So let's say I woke up in the morning, AM, I was 85 kilos. So at 85 kilos, fine, happy days. I'll take that. I then go for a 60-minute run, hit my 60-minute session, come back, and lo and behold, I'm 83 kilos. I've lost 2 kilograms of water, 2 liters, essentially. Now, the goal for us is to look at how do we replace that? That's a really big thing. How do we replace that? And to lose 2 kilograms of weight is mental, by the way. You won't do that. You probably be in typically around the 1 kilo mark, maybe even less. So it really just depends on how hard you push the run, the pace that you use. But normally we try and get you to go out and work in some sort of aerobic zone, because typically that zone is going to be what you will be using in your event itself. And what we want to try and do is then look at, well, how do we replace that? And we want to, the word replace, I'm going to write on here. When we look at replacing when we look at replacing water, we're looking at hourly loss. So for me, if I was to lose a kilogram, whatever that might be, I would try and replace 400 to 600 mil of that water probably every hour where I can. So that's a little 500 milliliter bottle, your typical normal bottle that you get. I try and get that on every single hour. Now, if you're somebody who sweats a lot more, that may be a bigger bottle. And that's absolutely fine. But we want to try and replace and replenish anywhere from 60 up to 80%. Okay, 60 up to 80%. Because if you try and drink 2 kilograms of water, 2 liters of water, whilst you're intra-session, that's not good, right? And coming after a session, you necking 2 liters of water, you're going to be pissing like a racehorse all day. So understand that. Another thing that's worth noting, we've worked with people that have gone into, for example, the Marathon des Sables, or they've done things like Dubai Marathon, or a marathon over in Oman as well, actually. In those events, heat will play a massive factor in how much water we need to put back into the system. So if you're anybody here listening now and you're going out and running somewhere in hot conditions, we have to be mindful of what that looks like. Right, next one, sodium. So we've spoken about the sweat test to get your baseline markers. We've spoken about how much we need to replace following something like that. So we're looking about 60 to 80% of our loss we need to replace. So if I lost a kilogram or 1 liter, I'd want to get 400 to 600, maybe even 800 mils in again if it's a bit hotter. We then need to look at sodium. Sodium typically is anywhere from 5,000 to 1,000 milligrams. And again, this comes back milligrams per liter. So what does that look like? Heavy salty sweeteners, your gels, etc., are normally in the higher range. They've normally got 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams per liter of sodium available to them. The product that I like to use is the Hydrate product by Combat Fuel, because it's a really good blend. It's a really bloody good blend. I know March On do a really good one. I think Awesome Supplements do a really good one as well. There's loads out there, and a lot of it comes down to flavor profile and what works for you. So for me personally, looking at sodium, you want to look at the back of the packet and make sure it's got about that in there available for when it comes to you doing that run. And then the only other final thing I'll kind of just say on this, which is really, I'm just going to write this in red. Plan small frequent sips throughout your event. Like you're going to require sodium, electrolytes, etc. in your protocol. You don't want to drink 3 or 4 liters before the event. You definitely don't want to try and get 2 or 3 liters on during the event. Like, we don't want you to just drink bucket loads of plain water, because then we go into an over hydration risk, and that's just hyponatremia territory. Stay away from it. Stay away from it. And we don't want that to happen for you, because otherwise all you're doing is basically diluting what we're trying to put into the system. So when it comes to using electrolytes and hydration, you see so many influencers that will rattle off, buy these hydration tabs, buy this, buy that. And this for me is where so many people get it wrong. Because if you're going online and just purchasing fuckloads of hydration tablets or hydration salts or these hydrate blends, and you're only ever using it in your workouts that take 45 to 60 minutes, you're probably missing the forest through the trees. They were designed with ultra endurance or longer endurance bouts of exercise in mind. So we've got to be mindful of that. Again, sweat test early, measure fasted weight, do a run for 60 minutes, measure sweat loss. When you know that, you know how much fluid you need to kind of take on board. And there are a number of other interventions that we can put in place following a sweat test that are going to help you make sure that we replace that 60 to 80% of water, and we replace the sodium levels that potentially you're going to need based on who you are. And again, there is individual indifferences here. So remember, water alone isn't enough, particularly with long endurance events. Sodium helps with transportation. Practice this as well and play with it, because you're going to need to do that, ladies and gents. Don't just rely on plain water and you're all right for a couple of sips. It's not going to work. So happy with that. Let's move into the next one. So the next one is, of course, E, which, to be honest, I don't really feel like I need to go too hard on here. Eat like an adult. Who'd have thought I'd be writing that? Eat like an adult. Oh my God, I cannot spell for the life of me. Eat like an adult. Okay. Eat like an adult should, in effect, be pretty self-explanatory. Protein is going to be really important in your diet. And I know bodybuilders and everybody else are like rattles on about it, but we're anywhere from 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram, okay, per kilogram of body weight per day. This is going to help with muscle protein synthesis. It's going to help with repairing what you've been doing to the body, and we need to understand that. The other thing I'm going to say is about carbohydrates, and I'm going to use this word. I'm going to use a different color. Carbohydrates. Periodize your carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are incredibly, incredibly useful. We need more on some of the longer, more voluminous training days that we have, and our body needs a little bit less on the days that we typically rest. If you're just starting out on your journey, it's probably not beneficial for you to dive into this information. But if you're somebody who's trying to get something right and you're trying to improve your times, etc., then understand that carbohydrates, if we can periodize them around our training window, we can leverage and utilize them more advantageously towards our sessions that we're going to be doing. And like, this is a big ideal. All right, you've got to get these things right. Protein and carbohydrates are going to be your friend. We probably want to limit a little bit of fat. That's all I'm going to say from that one. Again, individual nuances. Everybody needs to have their own way of doing things, and that's a key variable we've got to understand. Next one, no new food. And I've actually written this one down because I think it's important. Don't introduce new foods on race day. Don't introduce foods that you haven't used before. Don't change your breakfast. Don't throw gels in the system and go, yeah, I'm just going to use these gels. You've not used them in training, so why use them on the race day? I've seen this happen all too often. Digestive issues start happening. They wonder why they're shitting through the eye of a needle on a Portaloo 50 times in an hour. So again, think about that. One that I think is really important to mention is keeping fiber low. You know, fiber low from about 24 to 36 hours out, just depends. If you need me to sit here and say no alcohol, sleep needs to be a non-negotiable, these are the adult markers. We know that. You know that. But again, use that to your advantage. Keep the fiber content relatively low. Typically, we're aiming for 25 to 30 grams a day. But if we can reduce it down to in and around 5 to 10, it's just going to help again with digesting, helping with carbs, protein, etc., making sure we get everything in the system that we need. Final one from me is caffeine. Use caffeine to its advantage. How am I spelling caffeine? E-I-N. There we go. Use caffeine to its advantage. Too many people will throw caffeine down their grid and smoke through 4 espressos before they do their run. Probably don't want to do that. If you want to get the ergogenic stimulant effects of caffeine, we want to look at 2 to 3 milligrams per kilogram in a window about 60 minutes before. Yeah, about 60 minutes before. Give it time to go through the system. If you're doing it 5 minutes before, I can tell you right now it's not hitting the system in the way that you think it is. So remember, eat like an adult. Yeah, keep to the basics that you've done. Yes, boring works, but boring works for a reason, because then you're not testing shit that you don't need to do. Try and save some of the more gluttonous treats that you might think you can eat on these days to the end of the day, because digestive wise, you might find yourself tripping yourself up, particularly around ultra events. The backyard ultra, you don't really have much of an option. So that's why we need to test it. That's why you've got to test and play with your nutrition, because you're going to want to eat donuts. You're going to want to eat Greggs sausage rolls and yums and everything alike, because that's what keeps you on the track. It's what keeps you doing the yard. So again, understand that. That's really important. Okay, let's jump into the final one. I think we've tapped on this already so much, ladies and gents, but I know it's going to be useful, so let's jump into it. The last one for me is learn and practice. Again, this is why it's so important to do these things. Something that we do inside the Catalyst project is we do a D-minus 90 day, a D-minus 60 day, and a D-minus 30 day. Now, what that means is when we come to these D-minus strategies, 90 days out, I'm just going to write this out here. 90 days out, what do we do? 60 days out, what do we do? 30 days out, what do we do? essentially it's an opportunity for us to assess how our clients and our athletes are getting on with the stuff that we're giving them. We are trying to, guess what? Train. I'm just going to write that like that. Gut train. Train the gut. Train the gut to be susceptible to 30 grams every hour on the hour. On these longer runs, increasing it a little bit or decreasing it where we feel we need to. We've got to find what's comfy for you. And if we don't know, then we're guessing. That's why we do this type of stuff. Other stuff we're going to try and get from this is what we want to log what's going on. Yeah. Log what's going on. Asking questions like, okay, well, how did you feel on that? How much did you use? What was the timing like? Any symptoms? Did you feel a bit gassy? Did you feel a bit bloated? And it doesn't have to be too complex and over the top. It's just enough information that we can pull things back from you and go, that makes real sense. Let's see how we can get on from there. Yeah. Again, all we're trying to get from here is simulate a little bit. So these are just little simulations. D minus 90, D minus 60, D minus 30. Doesn't mean we're doing the whole event. I'm not going to get you to go and run an ultra marathon, but I'm going to get you to run some long distances, play with some of these protocols that we've just been speaking about and see what works best. So that's what we're trying to get out of this. And then again, come up with a couple of COAs, courses of action, our plan A's, our plan B's, and our plan C's. If this doesn't work, if these don't work, well, what do we do to help you move the needle forward? Because if we don't know that, we're gonna fall flat on our fucking ass. And that's the big thing to take away from this. This is what we kind of want people to make sure they're doing. Yeah. So again, let's kind of run through a bit of a summary because I think it's important for you guys to take away just a couple little snippets. Main thing is let's not add any new products on race day. Okay. That's just not a good idea. Don't just think water is the option. Like we need electrolytes in the system. We need to play with sodium. Like we have to play with that. Too little carbs, you're going to underfuel. Too many carbs is going to be too much and your gut's going to go into overdrive. We don't want that to happen. Digestive system is going to go and you're out the woodworks. We want to practice. We want to plan. We want to prepare. And we want to make sure that everything that you're doing is something that you can build confidence with. Because if you can build confidence with, it's one less thing that you have to think about when it comes to the event itself. And that's the whole point that we're trying to get after. Okay. Now, if you want all of this in a little one pager, be sure to drop me a message and let me know. We've got a little checklist thing that you can go through, which is quite cool. And understand like this stuff is exactly what has helped people that have done backyard ultras with us, Marathon des Sables. They've gone and done ultra fell running, which is hideous, by the way. Who the hell wants to run up and down mountains? Crazy. It's helped people smash even half marathons and London marathons. It's helped even down to ATHX and HYROX competitions. I know people that have done HYROX competitions 2 or 3 over the weekend. They've done an individuals, they've done a mixed pairs, and then they've done a team relay. These nutritional principles are all things that we carry. This is not new stuff. It's just normal things. So yeah, it's one of those vibes. But all I will say is if you found this video useful, please do like it. Please do drop me a comment below. I genuinely appreciate any interaction with these type of videos. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you think. And again, if you've got any questions and I can jump in and engage with you, that's absolutely amazing. I'm all for that. And stay tuned for another video coming up very, very soon. But in the meantime, peace and love. Take care, team. And I'll speak to you all soon.